It just became clearer why Donald Trump put J.D. Vance at the forefront to try to end the war with Iran. The movement gained momentum behind the scenes while the attacks continue on Iranian territory. But the White House is already working to push the conflict from the military phase to a political solution. The core of the issue isn't just about who will negotiate, the real issue is timing. Trump wants to end this war before it gets more expensive, longer, and harder to sustain both inside and outside the United States. How did Vance become central to this crisis? According to Axios, in a report reproduced by the Times of Israel, the vice president had a tough conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu, and he pressed the Israeli prime minister about being overly optimistic regarding the possibility of quickly toppling the Iranian regime. In other words, part of Trump's team began to see that the war has made tactical progress, but still hasn't produced a clear strategic way out. That's why Vance started being treated as a key figure to test the deal. Axios itself had already reported before that he could directly participate in a peace summit if Tehran agreed to open this channel. And why the rush? First, because the conflict has already lasted a month and several objectives declared by Trump remain unfulfilled. The Associated Press showed that the White House talks about destroying missile capabilities, weakening the military industry, neutralizing the Navy and Air Force, halting any nuclear progress, and protecting allies in the region. But Iran continues to launch missiles and drones, continues to pressure the Strait of Hormuz, and still imposes concrete costs on the operation. In short, there was heavy damage, but heavy damage is not the same thing as a political solution. Second, because the war has already turned into an economic shock. Reuters reported that the price of Brent crude oil has risen by more than 50% since the beginning of the conflict, and that the Strait of Hormuz accounts for about 1/5 of the global flow of oil and gas. The G7 itself has acknowledged that the crisis already threatens energy, fertilizers, and trade networks. That helps explain the urgency. Each extra week of war puts pressure on markets, increases shipping costs, fuels inflation, and adds strain for the United States and other nations that depend on this route. Third, because Trump wants to prevent the war from turning into an open-ended campaign. Reuters reported that Rubio insists Washington is on schedule and does not need a ground invasion. At the same time, the same agency showed that the president seems eager to reduce an unpopular conflict. This is the logic of the moment: maintain military pressure, but seek a way out before the debate shifts to the issue of boots on the ground. More casualties, more expenses, and more political fallout. It's not necessarily about retreating, it's about trying to end the operation from a position of strength. And how are the United States trying to do that? The Associated Press reported that Washington sent Iran a 15-point plan through Pakistan, while mediators like Egypt and Turkey are also involved. The White House in turn says that the talks remain productive and warns that if there is no agreement, the attacks could get worse. In other words, the bridge exists, but it remains surrounded by distrust, military threats, and political calculations on both sides. That's why there is a sense of urgency. Trump wants to leave before the conflict loses its form as a limited operation and turns into an endless war. And he wins. He was placed at the center of this mission, because at this moment the White House seems to have understood one simple and harsh thing: it's not enough to fend off attacks, it's necessary to bring the war to a political close.